Okay, it's time for an update. I don't think it's been it's been a little while. I don't think it's been that long, but I definitely have quite a lot of stuff to talk about. I still haven't bought much this year, which I said recently in a video that I actually think I removed. Nonetheless, I have said that recently that I'm not planning on buying much this year, and that's still true. And I've actually kept that promise better than I ever have before. This time I kind of figured that I'm gonna have to keep it because I might need the money later on. So I've not really wasted too much money on a bunch of Blu-ray releases, which is it's a bit kind of boring not to get to take part of of all of these great Blu-ray releases that I want to get. But on the other hand, it's allowed me to focus on the stuff that I already have. Although I have visited flea markets or secondhand stores, I should say, quite a bit in search for stuff that I can sell on. Kind of ties into the money thing. I kind of need to gather as much as I can. But while I am at these stores, it's hard not to pick up stuff for myself when I find them because they tend to be so cheap. And this is stuff that I can never find elsewhere. So I have actually bought maybe a bit too much on secondhand stores for myself. But beyond that, I haven't really. Well, I suppose the odd Amazon Marketplace order. But I think I've just bought one new Blu-ray release. I pre-ordered Cujo, the Eureka Blu-ray, which I did because I think the limited edition had some exclusive bonus features, like an interview with Kim Newman or something like that. So I really didn't want to miss out on that. But beyond that, I'm not planning on buying much. Although I mean, it may change. It may turn out that the money that I've been able to save up, I don't really need it for important stuff. So maybe later on this year I'll actually be able to spend it. I don't know. But for now I haven't. But that doesn't mean that I'm watching less stuff. Yeah. Anyway. I should stop rambling and start talking about the Blu-rays. I mean, I do have some stuff that I've had from before that I haven't shown, so I can start with a few Blu-rays that have been lying around for I don't know how long, but a few months probably. So we have this one first of all, The Secret of Kells, which is an animated film by Tom Moore, I think his name is. He did maybe this is co-directed, I'm not quite sure, but I know that it's partially by Tom Moore at least. Who made, after this, he made a movie called Song of the Sea, which I loved. This one was good, but definitely not as good as Song of the Sea. But it has the same kind of animation, kind of abstract-esque animation. Some of the scenes that play out, you're not really sure what what laws of physics they actually follow, but that makes it appealing, I guess. It's almost two-dimensional sometimes, and you kind of wonder, well, is the world actually two-dimensional? Well, I don't think it matters. It's just a really great looking animation. So I like the movie, but not quite as much as Song of the Sea. Here we have a movie called Home from Home, Chronicle of a Vision. It says here the prequel to the epic Heimat saga, which I talked about not too long ago. The Second Sight Blu-ray box set, the wonderful Blu-ray box set of the first Heimat series, which is a big, mammoth of a, or maybe that's not the right word, but a big, epic, sprawling story of Germany and of the people of Germany, or some of them, in this village. And this is a sort of prequel to that, like it says. This takes place, I mean, the first Heimat starts at 1919 and carries on throughout most of the 19th or 20th century to 1980. This one takes place somewhere in the mid-late 19th century. So I felt like this was okay to watch before having seen the other two Heimat series, because this one takes place before all of that. So I don't really think you need to know the characters that well. It's not really gonna help a lot. Like it's pretty much its own thing. But it's by the same director who made the other Heimat series. It's a long movie. It's almost 4 hours long. It was good. I mean, beautiful black and white photography. Um, really good. I mean, some parts weren't that exciting, but it's really well made. Really wonderful sceneries and characters, and a 4 hour long film. You know, it's quite a long movie, but it is a really good film. So here we have Hereditary finally. Always with the dust in my apartment, but oh well. So this one I've had for a while. I actually wanted to see this in the cinema, but it was not available in my city. So I finally bought the Blu-ray, and it took me a while to get to the film for some reason. But I've now seen it. It's an incredible horror film. I I'm not saying this to try to sound pretentious, but I do prefer old horror compared to new horror. I feel like modern horror films, they try to get at you with jump scares, and they try to be more supernatural, atmospheric, whereas the ones that I like in the 80s, they're more effects heavy, more practical effects, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek perhaps, and I kind of prefer that. I mean, when I say that I love horror, I usually refer to 80s horror, with certainly with exceptions, but that tends to be the era of horror that I like the most, when effects came into full effect. Okay, but nonetheless, there are obviously some great horror movies coming out these days, and this is one of them. I don't know. There's not really too much I can add to the discussion about this movie, but it is a really effective film, really scary at times. It says here genuinely terrifying, and that's for once it's completely true. You know, for once, with these cover quotes, there are some really freaky moments. Some of them, especially because the movie plays with sound in a way which is completely captivating. One scene completely removes all sound, and you're kind of wondering what the fuck is happening, what's gonna happen now, and it really, really was a good horror film. And of course, the ending has been controversial, but I forgot about that until the ending actually arrived, or I remember hearing a spoiler, and I was reminded of the spoiler when the ending actually came. So I wasn't expecting that, which I'm glad that I managed to forget that. But I actually liked the ending. I could understand why people wouldn't, but I really did. I liked how things were, without spoiling too much, I liked how there was no question about what was going on. The ending is not ambiguous. It's certainly not, and I felt like it really worked for this film. So I enjoyed the ending. Now I think, you know what, I'm gonna talk about a few Blu-rays very briefly that I've talked about before. Well, I've shown them before, but I've now seen them, and so I figured I'll just offer a few brief thoughts on them. Here's one that I wanted to rewatch because I saw a video with Razor Wire Reviews and Daisuke Beppu. They were talking about this movie, and it made me want to rewatch it because I have all these Blu-ray. Well, I have all of Miyazaki's films released in the UK on Blu-ray, but this is one of them that I had yet to visit on Blu-ray. So I had seen this previously on DVD, but not on Blu-ray. And it was a good time to actually rewatch it, and I do like it more this time. I still will say that it's not my favorite Studio Ghibli film, but some scenes are really wonderful. When he's flying his plane, and you see some of the scenery below, like there's something really nice about those scenes, and there's a really moving scene also involving the planes, when he appears to be, the main character appears to be in some kind of dream. He kind of looks up and he sees this long line of something, you can't really tell what it is. And then it zooms in and it turns out to be just thousands and thousands of airplanes. and that scene is really moving. If my interpretation of it is correct, it's well, I suppose you can have your own interpretations, but yeah, no, I like that scene quite a bit, and overall it's a fun movie. But I wouldn't say that it's one of my personal favorites from Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki. But I mean, if a film like Porco Rosso is one of the weaker ones, from my point of view, I mean, you know, you're talking about a pretty good director. Anyway, here we have Nightmare City. Yeah, finally watched this. I've had this for not too long, but this is a zombie film, or a film about contaminated people. Which, strangely enough, the director Umberto Lenzi, is his name somewhere here? I think so. I mean, there's an interview with him, so his name should be here somewhere. Yeah, right there. Okay, so he seems to take that very seriously. That this is not a zombie film. This is a film about contaminated people. And in one point of the interview, he even calls them zombies. And then he kind of pauses for a couple seconds, and he said, "Well, now I said zombies. Of course, I meant contaminated." So that was a pretty fun, slightly delusional interview. I really appreciated that interview, but the film, of course, is the main event. It's really fun. This is a type of film that I don't always appreciate, but there was something about this that I really enjoyed. It's just a fun movie. That's all I can say. Really. I just really enjoyed it. A lot of fun scenes, a lot of different locations, and of course some over-the-top stuff, some humorous stuff, which in horror movies like these you have to assume that it's not really intentional. But yeah, I like that more than I thought I would, actually. Here's actually a DVD from Arrow, which I bought for like £3 in a sale not too long ago. So I bought this because it's a film by Brian Usna. Not one of his best. I've been pretty sorry. I've been pretty generous in giving this a 5 stars out of 10, which is maybe a bit too high. It's not a great film. He really, in my opinion, he made some bad decisions with the editing and with the music. He has this really bad kind of groove nu metal. I mean, I love metal. I might not listen to a lot of metal these days, except for when I'm working out. But I still love it dearly. But this type of metal is just not my thing. Generally speaking, anyway. And he used that type of hard rock metal a lot, along with really frantic editing. I just think he could have done it in a different way, because I didn't really like that. It made the film, it was done in a certain way which reminded me of like the later Hellraiser sequels from around the same time, like early 2000s, late 90s, I guess. And there's something about movies from that time which just feels terribly dated in a really bad way. I mean, horror movies from the 80s, they might feel dated in a fun way with the effects, but stuff like this, it just doesn't date well. Nonetheless, there are some really fun effects and some fun scenes in this. But I did buy it because I'm loyal to this director. There's something about Brian Usna's films and his approach to talking about the films he does and whatever. I just really like him. I even listened to a podcast with him the other day when I was up for a jog. Well, jog. I just walked, but I listened to a podcast with him, and I just like listening to him. And there's an interview here with him as well, so I enjoyed. I mean, I liked it. I had a fun time ultimately with that DVD, but the movie is not particularly good. Anyway, here is a box set that I'm happy that I bought. I mean, I thought this was gonna go out of print when I bought this like three years ago. I just assumed that this is gonna go out of print really soon, so I better jump on this. Well, it took a while, but it now seems to be out of print. So I'm glad that I have this. I've seen The Ballad of Narayama previously, which was a really good film. But the one that I saw now a few weeks ago was an absolute masterpiece, and that is Profound Desires of the Gods. Already from the first shots of animals living on this island that the movie takes place on, I mean, you can just kind of sense that there's something special about this, the way it's filmed. I mean, it's a really, really great, profound film, an allegorical tale about invasion, you could interpret it as, but it's not. I mean, it's not overly didactic. It manages to get its message across in a really good way, while at the same time just being on another level, just a strictly entertaining film. I mean, there's almost something farcical about some of these scenes, and not in a bad way, but in a really charming way. These characters running around on this island, trying to do their business, basically, is often pretty humorous. It's not a comedy, but it's often pretty funny. So this is one that I had heard really good things about from years ago. So I'm glad that I've finally seen it. These other ones I haven't seen yet. I suppose especially Vengeance is Mine is one that I've heard good things about. But maybe this one as well, A Man Vanishes. But I'm not planning on watching any more of them for now. But I might in the future, or I will in the future at some point. But yeah, so that was a really great film. I should have shown this after the horror movies, but I forgot that I had this. Finally, Volume 2 has been announced, and I've had this for a while. I saw Malatesta's Carnival of Blood when I bought this, and I really didn't like it. So it took me a while to get to these two, but I finally did, and I suppose I prefer these two, but especially The Premonition, which was my favorite. I enjoyed quite a bit, even though it's not that good. It's pretty enjoyable. I mean, I think after these two, they just seemed so frantic and psychedelic, you get something like this, which is more subdued or more slow-paced, a different feeling. So maybe that surprised me that I was getting a movie like that after these two. I ended up liking this one the most, even though it's not something I'm gonna return to. But this is a really nice set, so I'm glad that they finally have the second one coming out, which I'll try to get. Even though I didn't love the movies, it was a fun presentation of some forgotten, some otherwise destined to be forgotten horror movies. So it's nice that they bring these movies out and present them with nice special features and all of that. So anyway, that's that. Now we're gonna move on to a lot of the second-hand store finds and whatnot. So I had no idea what this was, but I just bought this either to sell on or to keep for myself. It says The Complete Vampire Collection, Kindred the Embraced, and I'm not even sure what this is. It appears to be some kind of TV show. But this is region 1, so this one along with the next one that I'm going to show you is going to be added to the piles of movies that I have to wait to watch, because I currently don't have a region 3 player. Now this next one I couldn't believe that I found. Sports Night 10th Anniversary Edition Complete Series. Again, region 1, I can't see it at the moment, but this, I think I paid $2 for this. The complete series on DVD. The discs look fine. 10th Anniversary Edition with a bunch of special features. I think this might have another DVD release which is not the 10th Anniversary Edition, so it's possible that this has more extras than the other DVD. So I'm glad that this was the one that I found. I mean, I would have had, if they had the other one, I would have bought that, but I would have missed out on some special features. But yeah, so I'm really happy that I found this. This is a series that I've been monitoring on Amazon for years, trying to find it for a good price. It just never dropped down enough for me to want to pick it up cheap. So, and this was not something that I was expecting to find in a second-hand store. But sometimes you get lucky. Somebody who has imported something hands it into a second-hand store, and then you find it, and they have done all the work for you. You just need to pick it up. So, yeah, I was really happy about that. Also found this, How Earth Made Us. Goes without saying what this is about. This was, you know what? I think I paid like 10 cents for this, because I bought this along with a few VHS tapes, and they only charged they only charged 10 cents for the VHS tapes, and this must have been next to the VHS tapes, and I guess the guy at the register, he's not really, he doesn't know about box. I don't know. He didn't. I suppose he just mistook this for a VHS. So I think he actually charged me 10 cents for this, and well, I just didn't say something. I just let that happen. So shame on me, I guess. Let's continue with the second-hand store finds. So I found this, Crossing the Bridge, The Sound of Istanbul, a music documentary. I can't say I really remember too much. I did check it out, and it was pretty nice, but I can't say I really remember too much from it. But it's from the same director who made this, which I have, Fatih Akin. Faith. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but he had made. I'd had this previously, and he made this, so I'm gonna try to check this out soon. Okay. Killing Mrs. Tingle. So this doesn't look very good, but I think this was 50 cents, and it's with Helen Mirren, and so that's enough reason for me to get this. I think she plays the title character, so she must have a pretty big role, even though it's not a good movie. I got that for her. I don't know when I'll actually get to that, but I couldn't resist for the price. This is one that I actually bought to sell on, because I know that this had been a rather attractive title, at least in the past, The World's Fastest Indian. I decided to keep this because I watched it, and I liked it so much that I'm not gonna sell this. I really enjoyed this. This is about Anthony Hopkins. He plays an Australian, or was he from New Zealand? Well, yeah, New Zealand. And he has built this completely homemade, rather rough-looking but incredibly fast motorcycle, and it takes place in the 1960. It didn't feel like 1967, but it does take place in 1967, and it's about him going from traveling from New Zealand with his bike to America to get to this the only place that has like ground, flat ground long enough for him to actually test the speed of this thing, if you know what I mean. So it's about his journey when he goes over there, and it's partly a road movie, partly a charming comedy, and I just loved it. I really liked it. If you want a feel-good kind of road movie type film, where there's not a lot of antagonistic characters. I mean, most people in this film, in a really nice way, they just kind of get along. There's not any exaggerated melodrama, any what's the word? Any confrontations, which you might expect in a cliched way once in a while, once or twice in a film like this, to kind of break the otherwise upbeat or feel-good atmosphere. I mean, if you know what I'm talking about. There's nothing like that here, really. It's mostly just kind of, he runs into problems and difficulties, but most people are helpful and kind. And I just feel, maybe that sounds corny, but I just feel like that's something you don't really see in every movie. Like I like that part of the film, and it's just a nice feel-good film. So if you want something like that, I can highly recommend checking that out. I mean, it might not be a cinematic masterpiece, but it's a really nice film. Here's one that I found that I don't know, I kind of picked up for Thomas Jane, Stander. Well, once again, this is one that I bought to possibly sell, because I don't think this was available anywhere, so I think I could get my money back for this. I mean, you know, make some money off of it. But I'm gonna hold on to it for a while. Check it turned. I mean, I got the impression that this was supposed to be a pretty good movie, so I'm gonna hold on to this. I do like Thomas Jane, so I'll try to watch that at some point. Then I found this, Hell in the Pacific, really cheap, like an 8-hour, or how much is that, 450 minutes, so like, yeah, about 8 hours, 8.5 hours I think, of a documentary about the war, the Hell in the Pacific, the war between the US and Japan, I guess, towards the end of the Second World War. Anyway, I don't know enough about that, and so I figured this will be good to check out at some point. And then we have this, Havana, Robert Redford, Lena Olin, Swedish actress, directed by Sidney Pollack. And so all these names, I just figured, well, that has to be good, right? Well, it might not be, because I looked it up. Hasn't really gotten very good ratings and reviews, so I don't know if it's good. But I bought that. This I've had for a while. I don't know what the English title of this is, but I'm just gonna translate directly. Uncle Bumi, who can recall his past lives. I think the English title might be something like that. So it's a film by Apichatpong Verasetakul. Perfect pronunciation, I'm sure. One of the most difficult names in film, I think. He's a Thai filmmaker. I've seen this twice, actually. I saw it when it came out, and I didn't like it at all. And then I saw it for my film course a few years ago. I liked it a bit more. But I did want to get this to watch for a third time at some point, because I do like this director. I liked his more recent film, Cemetery of Splendor. But I especially like Syndromes and a Century and Tropical Melody. There's something really intriguing about those films, like truly intriguing in a way that I haven't really seen in quite that same way in any other films by any other director. He really has his own voice, his own ear. I mean, he uses sound in a really interesting way. He lets scenes play out, and he makes you look at things that you might not be interested in looking at otherwise in other films. He really does something really interesting, which I'm still not quite sure what that is, after several years of having been aware of him. But he's interesting enough to return to many times, and I do want to rewatch those two movies, Tropical Melody and Syndromes and a Century. They are really good, and I'd like to see them again, because it's been a while. This one I saw 2 days ago, Robin Hood Men in Tights. Again, this was 50 cents, so a good price. I had been wanting to see this again. I've seen this only once. As a big Mel Brooks fan, this one I've only seen once, probably 10 years ago. And I remember laughing more that time than I did now. It's definitely not one of my favorites from Mel, but it has its moments. It is funny. I like the part with the bridge, with Little John. They have to cross the bridge, and it's this ridiculous tiny bridge. And I like the blind man. He contributes with some laughs, for sure. So it is funny, but it's not my favorite from Mel Brooks. I think maybe the last second-hand store find, except for the Swedish stuff that I'll get to in the end, Waltz with Bashir. Now this one I've probably had for a couple years, maybe more than that. This is a film from Israel. It sounds like an oxymoron, but it did, because I remember not quite understanding how this film could be an animated documentary, but that's what this is supposed to be. and it is that it tells the story of something that I don't know if I should be embarrassed, but that I didn't know, a part of history that has escaped me. When the Israeli army fought in the Lebanon war, about this invasion into Lebanon. I think that's what it was. I apologize for my ignorance on that, but it was a really good film, and they used animated footage because they figured it would be too cheesy or too typical to retell these stories from real people in live action, and so they figured animated footage would work better. Yeah, I'd say it really works well. It's a tough movie to watch towards the end. There are some scenes that are very upsetting, which is the intention, certainly, and they deliver those scenes in a really effective way too. Switching from animation that you've seen throughout the whole film to actual real footage, which I wasn't too surprised that they would do that. But yeah, really good animated film, albeit not an entertaining one, not an enjoyable one, perhaps. So I think we're gonna move on to the 4 DVDs that I have that I bought from Amazon Marketplace recently. So we have The 5 Obstructions, a film by Jürgen Lett and Lars von Trier. It's a really unique film. It's hard to classify. Basically, Lars von Trier, he has a discussion with this director Jürgen Lett. Anyway, it's Danish guys, Danish names, I can't fucking pronounce them. He has made a film in the 60s called The Perfect Man, The Perfect Human. Yeah, right there. A short film, which is a film that Lars von Trier loves. It's one of his favorites, apparently. And when this film was made in the early 2000s, Lars basically tells Jürgen, he gives him increasingly difficult limitations in which he has to remake his own film, The Perfect Human. So he tells him to remake the film that he made in the 60s, but with increasingly difficult limitations as to what he can and cannot do. And it's hard to make sense of it until the end, when I suppose some pieces are connected, but it's still not an entirely clear film as to what it wants to tell the viewer. But I had a good time with it. It's interesting enough and unique enough to be one to check out, although it might not be for everyone. But yeah, I'd say that I liked it. Here's one from Greg Araki, Nowhere. You know, I don't love this director. I've seen a few of his movies, and the more of them that I see, the more I realize that there's only really one that I truly like, and that is Mysterious Skin, which is the one that I saw first many years ago, and haven't seen it in a long time. But it's the movie that made me aware of this director, and that made me want to check out more of his movies. And they always seem to be about teenage angst, and he uses kind of psychedelic, surreal, sometimes sci-fi elements to enhance that, I suppose. And in this one, and in the one that I saw not too long ago, The Doom Generation, he sort of does that, and I don't know if it's really for me. I mean, this one was pretty good, but it's aesthetic. It's definitely not something that I can sit back and enjoy. So I still feel like the Mysterious Skin movie is the only one that I've seen from him that I actually really like. But anyway, I think he's making a TV show at the moment, or he has made one. which I think is sort of about the same thing. It's a similar kind of thing, it seems like. So yeah, he has his own style, to be sure. Somebody else who I suppose have his own style, although this one is more PG, is John Waters, and here I have Hairspray. So I've become a bigger fan of him recently. I think I talked about him in a video not too long ago, so I'm not going to repeat what I said in that, but I've become a bigger fan, just to sum things up. I've become a bigger fan of John Waters recently, the past year or so. And it really bums me out that there are some really great new Blu-ray editions of his movies, like Serial Mom was released on Blu-ray by, I think, Shout Select. I could be wrong. And Female Trouble was released on Blu-ray by Criterion. I'd love to get those, but I'm just not able to at the moment. So I'd love to see those, and I've seen them before, but I'd love to get the Blu-rays and rewatch them and enjoy the bonus features. But I have to wait, and I have to settle for things like this at the moment. Bare bones DVDs. Well, to be fair, this is the only one out of the ones that I bought so far, which seems to be bare bones. He does do pretty damn entertaining audio commentaries, but the DVD didn't have one. The Blu-ray does, and I figured, well, the DVD has to have that too, right? Well, it doesn't, so I'm gonna have to rebuy Hairspray on Blu-ray as well to get the commentary, because John Waters' anecdotes, they are good enough to double dip for, so to speak. Here's a man who is known as a genius. He was in the 60s. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. I bought this because I have come to the conclusion that Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys is maybe the best album that I've ever heard, and I've known that the song God Only Knows is one of my favorites, and it always will be. I can't imagine it not being one of my favorites in the future. I've known that for quite a while, but it took a while before Pet Sounds truly clicked with me. But I think it must have been last year when I decided to return to it for the first time in maybe a few years. And I just really, I liked it before, but finally I really got the whole thing, what it was trying to say. And I subsequently listened to the Smile sessions as well, and I really had a lot of fun with that. And I feel like I've come to know this person, or at least who he was in the 60s. Like, I read a lot about his ambitions and his inspirations and what he wanted to do with the Smile sessions, or Smile as it was supposed to be called, but then it was never released for various reasons. But yeah, so that's sort of why I buy this, because I've become such a big fan of this man and of the Beach Boys. But he really was the genius behind the songwriting process. So I wanted to, just get a few things with him, and he has excuses for. Well, I'd like to be as diplomatic as possible here, but I mean, I don't think he's great live in this on this DVD. I just don't think he is, but like I said, he certainly has his reasons why that might be the case. He's gone through a lot of shit over the years. It's nice to see that he's still kicking around. This is not new. This is probably 15 years old now. It's not a major film, it's just a small kind of concert film, road movie kind of thing. But it was nice to see. And I don't think that they can recreate the magic of those songs live. I didn't really feel it, if you know what I mean. But it was nice to see, and there are a couple other DVDs that I'd like to get. Yeah, anyway. But the Beach Boys, I really think that they are one of the... They've created some of the best music that you can hear in terms of pop music. Here's one called Delirious, which I don't know how long I've had this. It's been around for a while. lying in piles on the floor and just waiting to be watched, and I finally did. It's a film with John Candy, which, yeah, I've been a fan of him for a while, quite a long time. And this has a really fun premise. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite deliver. It seems like there were some sloppy decisions in the script, and maybe they rushed a few things, because they really had a pretty good plot going. It could have been a much better film, but it was still more entertaining than I was expecting, because actually when I bought this, I was under the impression that this was one of the better John Candy movies. Then when I received it, I did what maybe you're not supposed to do, but I looked it up and I saw that people didn't generally love this, and I was like, huh, maybe it's not that great after all, and that just put me off watching this for a while. So I've had this for maybe a couple years at this point, but I've seen it now, and it was actually not that bad. It was quite fun. Definitely one that I can see myself returning to. Mariel Hemingway as well, who I recently rewatched, I think for the third time in Manhattan. So she's in this. Alright, so the Delirious was a yeah, that was also actually a Amazon Marketplace purchase. But these next few will be from Ginza, as well as maybe a couple second-hand store purchases, mostly from Ginza, I think, from this Swedish store. They often have sales, and when they do, then I tend to pick up some movies that I want to see cheap on DVD. So this is Loveless, obviously about Linda Loveless, who was a porn star in the 70s, and this is about her, and Amanda Seyfried plays her. It's pretty good, actually. It's not great. I mean, it's, you know, it is what it is. It's not, you know, yeah, it is what it is. It's fine. It's not great, but it's pretty entertaining for what it is, I suppose. And the cast is good. Bobby Cannavale, Hank Azaria, etc. But it was fine. Nothing too great. Here is a film from David Cronenberg. I think this might be his latest. Maps to the Stars. I suppose this would be a satire on Hollywood. And yeah, this was really good. I think it's been a while since I saw a Cronenberg film, and I haven't seen too many of his more recent movies, but this one I liked quite a bit. What's the English title? Mrs. Henderson Presents. Pretty enjoyable, kind of period piece comedy. What's the director's name? Stephen Frears. So if you know Stephen Frears, you might know kind of the aesthetic of the film, which is not usually my thing, but this one I kind of enjoyed. It's yeah, Judi Dench, Bob Hoskins, pretty enjoyable. Here's a film by Maren Ade, who made Tony Erdmann a few years ago, which I really thought was a great film. This one, which she made before, a few years before that, you can look up the German title if you're interested, because I don't know what the English title is of this. This one I really didn't like at all. I didn't like the characters, I didn't like their relationships or their chemistry, and it just didn't really interest me, and I had a really hard time working my way through that film. I just didn't like it. So that happens sometimes. Oh, this one, White Material, it's a film by Claire Denis, and I don't think I've seen any of her movies. And then Isabelle Huppert is another reason why I want to see this. But I put this on, and I guess it was late at night, or I wasn't in the mood, and I turned it off, and I intended to get back to it. And then I just never did, which is a shame, because now I feel like it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a lot for me to want to put this on again, because my experience with this last time was not very good. for whatever reason. But I still am interested in Claire Denis movies. But I show it now because I don't think I'm gonna return to it anytime soon, in all honesty. Here's one that I actually was given to me, Dan in Real Life, which I've seen once before, and it was kind of, a strange thing, because I've seen this once, maybe 10 years ago. Watching this again now, it felt strangely familiar. Something about the movie felt familiar, which almost as if now and when I saw it last time was kind of attached together like some kind of wormhole. It's a ridiculous thing to say, but sometimes, movies you haven't seen in a while, you don't think you remember too much from them. They just kind of feel familiar. However, this one, for whatever reason, I really didn't like this at all. This would have, you'd think, some of the ingredients that would make for a film that I would enjoy. Really good actors, Steve Carell, Juliette Binoche, and other really good actors, and this big family gathering, drama comedy, but it just didn't do much for me this time, and I really didn't like it at all for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. In the Valley of Elah, this was quite good. Tommy Lee Jones and I know her name. For fuck's sakes, Charlize Theron. Definitely two of my favorites. I mean, he has been for a while. She's starting to become one of my favorites. In fact, I just found Monster, which I was really happy about. Again for 50 cents. So I am gonna try to check that out soon. Looking forward to that. I also saw her in Tully recently, which she was really good in. So two of my favorites, although she has only been one of my favorites for quite a short time, I suppose. Susan Sarandon as well. I mean, it's a really well made film about I suppose being critical towards war, being sent into war. And the title, which becomes apparent towards the end, is a pretty poetic way of talking about that. I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you've seen it, maybe you remember. So I like the ending of this. But then ultimately there's something about the film that I didn't love. And so it didn't end up being one that for me was a great film, but I would recommend it. This one, on the other hand, I thought was really quite a good, moving, well-made, surprising, entertaining film, a Texas love story. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where the DVD the picture quality is just bad, and it really takes some away from the film, or from the enjoyment of watching the film. It's as if you're seeing 75% of what's actually there. A really bad DVD transfer. It's just blurry, kind of blotchy in the dark scenes. Not blurry, but in the dark scenes you can see the fucking pixels, and you're just thinking to yourself, man, on Blu-ray this would look so much better, and I would have a much better time with this. But nonetheless, it is a really good movie. Which I didn't think that this was going to be one of those movies where a crime separates the lovers, so to speak. I thought it was going to be more sort of direct. I mean, they do. Here's me and my attention to detail. They are wearing cuffs, so maybe that should have given me a clue. But I guess I just didn't see that. Anyway, so that was a surprise for me when I put the movie on. But on the other hand, I rarely look up things in detail. When it comes to movies like these, I just cannot tend to put them on. So I was surprised with this one, actually. I actually liked it more than I thought I would. Now, finally, to the pile of Swedish movies that I have. I'm just gonna go through this as quickly as I can. And in terms of English titles, I'll do my best, but I don't really think too many people cares about these movies, or I don't think too many people want to look these up to actually see them. But anyway, this might actually be a Danish film, but it's with Mikael Persbrandt in the main role, so I decided to include it here. This was awful. This was a really bad movie. Just has all the cliches. It is unnecessarily gloomy and depressing and sad, and it just really didn't move me whatsoever. And Michael, he's not very convincing as this rock musician. It just tried to do something that many other movies have done a lot better. So this was honestly quite bad. It's a bad movie. It's my opinion. Here's one that I was happy to find. Halmstad. That's the city in which I live. This is actually the third DVD that I've found out in the wild about just documentary stuff about this city, and I've had a pretty fun time picking them up. This is a historical Odyssey. Yeah, it was fine. It felt like, almost had the feeling of a school project, which well, a really good school project, not a bad one, but certainly not a great production. There are some pretty good animation in this though, and there are actually even some special features on this. So yeah, I like coming across things like that. Slightly similar, or yeah, I suppose so. This is another historical documentary called 100 Swedish Years, which is an 8-hour long TV show, produced and narrated and made by, well, it's narrated by this guy Hans Villius, and I think I don't know to what extent he has produced this. It says Olle Häger as the script and producer, so but it's the two of them who's made this, and I think they've worked together before. They're two pretty well-known figures in historical retellings, well, at least of Swedish history, and that's what this is. It's a TV series in 8 parts about the 20th century in Sweden, and it's really good. I don't usually watch stuff like this, but I really like this a lot. Basically every episode starts from the turn of the century in 1900 and moves its way throughout the 20th century, and then the next episode jumps back and does the same thing, and they all focus on something slightly different, although certain important events are mentioned more than once, which is it's a good way to teach you about things, to move throughout the same century multiple times, because I think repetition, for one thing, makes you learn things. Not that they repeat everything. I mean, there are a few things that they repeat, but most things are new. But I mean, you get the sense of the passage of time throughout the 20th century, the culture, the fashion, the technology. It becomes very familiar as you watch this. And I mean, I was already familiar with that before, I guess, but it's still a really nice way to present a TV series like this. Yeah, he has been described as the David Attenborough of Sweden, by the way, which I don't know how broadly he has been described as that, but I did see that comment online. Anyway, so this was really good. And for that reason, I was really happy when I found this in a second-hand store. Hermans Kings, another guy who is very well known for teaching the Swedes about history, Herman Lindqvist. So this is I suppose a TV series in 10 parts. They're not in order here, but you can see number 10, so you know that there's 10 parts if you don't want to count. So each one of these episodes delves into a king, a Swedish king, and that is something that I've always felt like I should know more about than I do. So this is, especially after having enjoyed this, it feels like I actually want to watch this now. It's, you know, quite a lot. I mean, 780 minutes. It's a lot to get through. But I'm willing to educate myself about something I should probably listen to a bit more in school. Although some of that stuff is difficult to remember. All of those details and accounts and wars and feuds, etc., etc., and lineages. It's never been something that I've had an easy time remembering. But I think that's a thing when you get older, you tend to become more interested in history. Now I'm not old, but I kind of sense that that's starting, and I expect that's gonna continue as I get into my 30s and my 40s, whatever. And that's, you know, that's not a bad thing. Yeah, okay, so here's just a random pile of movies and documentaries, and a little thing that I found very cheap, documentary that was, you know, not great but fine. Silvana, feminist hip-hop artist. Here's something that I don't know too much about. Some kind of live performance thing, comedy, theater from the 60s, I would guess, maybe 70s. 74. TV show that I'm not sure exactly why I bought, because I don't think I'm gonna really like this. But I'm willing to check it out at some point. Here are some old comedies, 4 classic films with Edvard Persson. I don't really know much, very well who he is at all. I know he made a lot of these comedies in the 30s and 40s and stuff. So I paid like $1 for this. So $1 for four classic comedies, that's a pretty good deal. Selma. I have no idea what this... It is about Selma Lagerlöf, it seems. Yeah, I guess so. Who, if you don't know who she is, she is a incredibly famous writer. She wrote the... I mean, because this is a film channel, you might know the film The Phantom Carriage, and she wrote the story to that. The film from 1921, I think. 20 maybe. Yeah, but yeah, so I guess I assumed that that's what this was about, but I just didn't look very closely at it. I just kind of picked it up. And then here's another documentary, actually 2 documentaries. One about being gay and growing up in the... whenever this was made, in the late 90s, early 2000s, being gay and female. And the other one about those are young women or girls. And one about older women who tells about what it was like to be gay in the middle of the 19th or 20th century. They were okay. I sort of end up disliking a lot of these documentaries that I randomly check out because they're Swedish, but sometimes I really do find stuff that I care for deeply. To finish things off, I do want to mention, and I'm not sure if I waited until... I didn't really actively do this. I just kind of thought as I was making the video that, I'm just going to wait with those until the end. And I don't know if I did because he's a controversial figure in today's climate. But I've been rewatching Woody Allen's movies. And that conversation, by the way, is perfectly valid. But I don't think that this is the place for it. And all I know is that I love his movies. I think he's a great filmmaker. And if rumors turned out to be facts, then I would have had to reconsider. But anyway, I think he's a great filmmaker, and I'm not gonna stop watching his movies. I respect people's opinions for wanting to, or not being able to watch his movies. That's, I get it, it's fine. But I think he's such a great filmmaker that I'm still gonna watch his movies as it is now. Um, and I've had these for a while. These are only the first two. There is a third one as well. But I've been going through his filmography, rewatching his movies, and watching a lot of them for the first time. And I'm nearing a point where I've only a few movies left by Woody Allen that I haven't seen, which is, it feels kind of sad, because it always seemed like such a given thing to always to have a bunch of Woody Allen movies that I've never seen, because he made so fucking many movies, like one a year for 50 years almost. But I'm nearing a point now where the movies that he's made that I still haven't seen, they're getting fewer and fewer, and I've really had a fun time with these 3 box sets. The other one is in front of the TV because there's still a few in that I haven't seen. Yeah, these are the first 2 volumes released by Arrow. Yeah, I just thought that I would mention that I've been going through these, and I mean Annie Hall and Manhattan, which I mentioned before when I talked about Delirious. Those might be his 2 most popular, well-known movies. I've seen those twice before, and they never really clicked with me. I mean, I liked them both times, but I didn't quite see why they were so beloved. But it's interesting as you age, how you all of a sudden you kind of I don't know what it is. Maybe you have enough life experience at some point to have something click, which hasn't clicked before. Whatever it is, it's nice when that happens, because now when I actually watched Annie Hall and Manhattan for the 3rd time, not long ago at all, just in the past few weeks, or well, Manhattan at least, and Annie Hall might have been a little bit longer ago. Anyway, I just really, I just love them in a way that I haven't before. So yeah, that's always nice when that happens, because it is much nicer to like something than not to like something. Like, I never get satisfaction out of dissing famous movies. I'd much rather be totally on board with why they're so great, if you know what I mean. I mean, there are people who seem to take great pride and satisfaction in completely critiquing masterpieces. But I mean, I really don't get much pleasure from that. I'd much rather agree with the fact that they're great. Because obviously, if they're big classics, then there is something in them which is great. If that makes sense, if you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I think all of his movies are certainly not like that, because he is somebody who seems to feel the need to work at a speed in which he can't keep up quality-wise on a consistent level, meaning he makes movies even if he doesn't have a particularly great idea, because making movies, that's what he does. So some movies, they're not as great as others. I mean, I had a friend who once said, even Woody Allen's worst movies are better than most movies. But I don't really agree with that. I think Woody Allen's worst movies are pretty bad, because he's human. He's made bad movies, or mediocre movies at least. But his good movies, and there's certainly a lot of them, they really do convince me that he is one of the he has one of the most impressive filmographies of any director that I know. Anyway, and yeah, so I've always been a big fan, and I feel like I've become an even bigger fan of his movies now that I've gone through them again. But yeah, so movies like Bananas, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask, Love and Death, Interiors, Stardust Memories, Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy, and Broadway Danny Rose. In these 2, those were first-time viewings. Yeah, and then I've been rewatching the other ones for the most part. And yeah, I've had a really good time doing that. I gotta say. I actually recently bought the Take the Money and Run on DVD, and I received that today in the mail, so I might actually watch that tonight. That's another one that I haven't seen, and I'm really looking forward to it. I've seen the scene where he's in the orchestra, you know, street orchestras. They're moving. Somebody's playing the drums, somebody's playing the trombone, somebody's playing the trumpet. He's playing the cello, and so he needs a chair to sit down, but he can't keep up with the other players because he needs to move the chair every time he wants to play. So I've seen that scene, and I'm looking forward to seeing the whole film. Anyway, so that's today's very long update. Thank you for watching. If you saw the whole thing, I really appreciate it. I'll be back at some point with more movie talk. So until then, whatever you say at the end of videos. Take care. Bye. It shouldn't be that difficult after 10 years, surely.